Welcome to Infinitive Stories, where we believe every story has the power to connect us, bring us joy, and spark conversations that can change the way we see the world. Today's story is one of those unexpected adventures that could have turned into a nightmare, but instead became a testament to the power of community, standing up for what's right, and, of course, a lot of humor along the way. I want to take you on a journey about my little garden gnomes, and how they almost got banned by my Homeowners Association, HOA. Now picture this. It's a sunny Saturday morning, the perfect kind of day to sip coffee on the porch and just enjoy the quiet of my neighborhood. I had my usual coffee mug in hand, the one that's chipped at the edges and so old it might be a family heirloom at this point. The birds were chirping, the breeze was just the right amount of crisp, and everything felt right in the world. Then, like a little storm cloud out of nowhere, I noticed an envelope on the doorstep, an official-looking one. You know that feeling you get when you see something that's both formal and uninviting? Like it's important, but it's definitely not going to be good news? Yeah, that's the kind of envelope I'm talking about. It was from my HOA. Now, I've dealt with them before, sending me reminders about lawn care, the right shade of paint for the house, and the importance of maintaining aesthetic harmony in the neighborhood. I assumed this would be one of those benign letters about trimming a tree too close to the sidewalk. But no, I opened it, and to my utter disbelief, there it was in bold letters. Remove the garden gnomes. You're probably wondering, what's the big deal about garden gnomes? Well, let me explain. These aren't just any gnomes. I've had them for years, and they're not tacky or intrusive. They're cute, quirky, and honestly, they make my yard feel like a little piece of magic in an otherwise ordinary suburban neighborhood. There's Greg the fisherman, who looks like he's always waiting for the perfect catch, his little fishing rod and bucket almost seeming to waggle in the breeze. Then there's Gloria, the flower girl gnome, with her colorful blooms surrounding her and a serene smile on her face. And let's not forget Gus, the bookworm gnome, who, much to my delight, is often surrounded by tiny books and wears thick glasses. These gnomes are more than just decorations. They're part of my family's history. Growing up, I spent summers at my grandmother's house, and she had a magical garden filled with everything from wind chimes to fairy figurines to, yes, gnomes. I'd sit for hours in her garden, daydreaming about the adventures of each little creature she had placed around the yard. When she passed away, I wanted to carry on that legacy. These gnomes remind me of her, of the warmth and love she always radiated, and of those carefree afternoons spent imagining wild stories about her garden's inhabitants. But apparently, to my HOA, none of that mattered. The letter explained that my gnomes were in violation of the community's visual harmony standards. Visual harmony? We're talking about small ceramic figures here. Hardly something that would ruin the entire neighborhood's aesthetic. The HOA claimed they were distracting and disruptive, as if they were neon signs or giant inflatable lawn ornaments. They were just tiny gnomes. At first, I couldn't believe it. Surely, I thought, this must be some mistake. There's no way my beloved gnomes were going to be banned from my yard. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started by reaching out to the HOA to politely ask for clarification. Maybe they'd made an error, or maybe they didn't realize how harmless and beloved these gnomes were. Their response? A polite but firm reiteration of their aesthetic guidelines. According to them, any unapproved outdoor decorations were grounds for removal. They didn't even acknowledge the sentimental value of the gnomes or the positive impact they had on the neighborhood. That's when I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let this absurdity slide. I sat down to write a letter, one that wasn't just polite. It was passionate, heartfelt, and a little bit humorous. I explained how the gnomes were a tribute to my late grandmothers and how they brought joy to the community. I even pointed out that the HOA's guidelines didn't explicitly mention garden gnomes. Surely, if they were going to ban something, it should at least be clearly defined in the rules. But I didn't just want to write a letter. I wanted to make sure my neighbors knew what was happening. So I started a petition called Save the Gnome Squad. And you know what? The response was overwhelming. Neighbors who'd never spoken to me before came forward, sharing their support and signing the petition. Some told me they loved the gnomes because they brought a touch of whimsy to the street. Others shared how they'd taken pictures of the gnomes with their kids, who loved to imagine the gnomes on their secret missions. The petition quickly gained traction, and soon I had dozens of signatures. When the next HOA meeting rolled around, I was ready, armed with my petition, my letter, and even a slideshow presentation. Yes, I made a PowerPoint. I stood before the board members and explained why these gnomes were more than just garden ornaments. They were a part of my family's history, a piece of the neighborhood's charm, and a source of joy for everyone who passed by. I kept the mood light. making jokes about Gus the bookworm and his imaginary book club. I could see some of the board members softening, especially when the neighborhood kids started speaking up. They had their own stories about the gnomes, how Greg the fisherman gnome helped them catch imaginary fish, how Gloria gave them gardening tips, and how Gus had become their reading mascot. The more they spoke, the more I realized this wasn't just about a few silly figurines. It was about preserving the character of our community. In the end, the HOA didn't back down completely, but we came to a compromise. I agreed to move the gnomes to a more private corner of my yard, out of view from the street. It wasn't a perfect solution, but the gnomes stayed, and I'd fought for them. This whole experience was a reminder that sometimes, even the smallest things, like a few garden gnomes, can make a big impact. They represent something far more important than just decoration. They represent family, community, and the little pieces of joy that make life worth living. So next time you see a garden gnome in someone's yard, don't just think it's a quirky decoration. Think of it as a reminder to stand up for what's important to you, no matter how small it may seem. And if you've ever had a moment where you had to fight for something you love, I'd love to hear your story. Share it with me in the comments below. Let's continue spreading positivity and joy, one story at a time. Thank you for joining me today on Infinitive Stories. If you liked this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use a little laughter and inspiration today.